All right, let's get right into it. It's practically impossible to overstate the impact of the Beatles. We're talking about four working-class kids from Liverpool who, in less than a decade, became the biggest cultural force on the entire planet. But how? How on earth did they manage to not just change music, but pretty much everything else along with it? And yeah, that quote right there, it just nails it. This isn't just a story about some catchy tunes. Oh no. This is about a full-blown cultural earthquake. They were a genuine shock to the system, and they completely reshaped the world for young people, for art, and for society itself. So, to really get the sheer scale of that explosion, you first have to picture the world they were about to crash into. Because believe me, it was a very, very different place, especially over in Britain. I mean, try to imagine a world that in a lot of ways still felt black and white. Post-war Britain was kind of rigid, still clinging to the old ways. And the pop music scene? Well, it was the perfect reflection of that. It was safe, it was polished, and it was completely controlled by the grown-ups. This slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the old formula, these clean-cut singers performing songs written by a team of professionals in some office. But then you get the Beatles. They wrote their own stuff, they were wickedly funny, and they were just real. That authenticity, that was their superpower. So you can imagine when this tidal wave of realness finally hit, people weren't just hearing a new sound, they were hearing a whole new attitude. And this is such a perfect example. Before the Beatles, a press conference was, well, boring. It was polite, it was predictable, but these guys, they turned it into a performance. They were cheeky, they were smart, and they just refused to play the game. They had the guts to just be themselves, and back then, that was absolutely revolutionary. And then, they came to America. And wow, 73 million people. Think about that. Nearly half the country watched their first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. And remember, this was just a few months after the Kennedy assassination. The country was in mourning, and suddenly this joyful, rebellious, electrifying noise was exactly what everyone needed. And just like that, Beatlemania was everywhere. It wasn't just about the songs anymore. Nope, it was about how you looked, how you felt. That famous haircut, it became this quiet little symbol of rebellion for an entire generation. It was a way of saying, hey, I'm part of this new thing. Okay, so this massive cultural wave, it also translated into just pure, mind-blowing industry dominance. And the numbers, well, they're just staggering. 14! Seriously, let that sink in. They had 14 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 at the same time. That included the entire top 5 spots. It was a level of total domination that no one had ever seen before. And honestly, we haven't seen it since. And the shockwaves from that success were huge. They didn't just sell a ton of records. They basically invented the modern music business as we know it. They turned it from a small-time operation into a global machine. All of a sudden, every single record label was desperately scrambling to find the next Beatles. They didn't just climb to the top, they rebuilt the whole ladder. But here's the crazy part. Right when they were at the absolute peak of their fame, the top of the world, they did something nobody saw coming. They changed the game all over again. You gotta understand, they were exhausted. They were tired of touring, tired of the grind, and so tired of the screaming. The screaming was so deafening, they literally couldn't even hear what they were playing anymore. The music had become secondary. So they did the unthinkable. They quit. They decided to stop touring for good. And by doing that, they basically pioneered this whole idea of the studio band. The studio wasn't just a place to record a song anymore. It became their playground, their laboratory. Here, they could experiment with any sound, any instrument, any weird idea they could dream up, stuff that would be impossible to ever do live on stage. And this is when things get really interesting. This creative freedom just unleashed this incredible explosion of genius. Look at this timeline. In just 3 short years, they went from the mature, complex pop of Rubber Soul to the mind-bending, psychedelic art of Revolver, all the way to Sgt. Pepper, which was basically the world's first major concept album. It was a staggering evolution. But, with all that success came this whole new kind of cage. They had created their own company, Apple Corps, and now they weren't just musicians anymore.
Now they were businessmen, trapped in boardrooms, signing contracts. The very machine they had built was starting to crush the magic.
And this story, it just perfectly captures that feeling. One day, George Harrison just couldn't take it anymore. He literally played hooky from a boring business meeting, went over to his friend Eric Clapton's house, and just walked out into the garden with a guitar. And as the sun came out, he felt this wave of relief. And that simple moment of escape, of feeling the sun, that's where one of their most beautiful, timeless songs comes from.
So even though they officially broke up in 1970, their influence, well, it never really went away, did it? Let's take a quick look at the world they created, a legacy that's almost too big to wrap your head around.
I mean, their fingerprints are just everywhere. They took pop music and said, this can be art. They made the album the definitive statement for an artist. They basically invented the music video. They pushed recording technology into the future. They showed the world that a pop star could be more than just an entertainer. And yeah, they gave a voice to an entire generation.
And of course, the sales are just astronomical. Over 800 million albums sold worldwide. And that's the thing. They were the innovators, and they were the most popular band in the world. Being both at the same time, that is incredibly rare.
You know, this quote from a former Rolling Stone editor, it really sums it all up perfectly. When you look at the sheer scale of the change, the music, the culture, the business, they are just in a league of their own.
Which really makes you wonder, right? In today's world where everything is so fragmented and fame is so fleeting, could any single band or artist ever have that kind of universal impact again? It's a question we're thinking about.